Natural Balance Hoof Care Corner. For the next several weeks, we're going to be talking about laminitis. It's springtime now, and it seems like that's when we see more laminitis occurring in horses. Not that it doesn't happen any time of the year, but in the springtime we certainly see it more often. I'm going to talk about horses that rotate and what that's all about and how it differs from those who are sinkers. And we'll also talk some about the modern day laminitis event of equine metabolic syndrome, which has been in the past classified as Cushing's or Cushing syndrome. But first of all, let's look at the graphics here. I want to show you a little bit about what's really going on here. You'll see that there's an inflammation in the front part of the hoof that surrounds the side here. And if you look, this is what I'm going to describe to you is the horses that are rotating. And basically speaking, the lamina in the front part of the foot, from about here around to the other side, are the lamina that are affected. And it's basically in the front portion of the coffin bone. The back part is generally not as affected as much or not affected at all, and depending on the severity of the situation. But if you look at this graphics, you'll see that the coffin bone actually separates from the wall in front by the lamina and moves downward in the tip of the coffin bone actually heads towards the ground, pushing the sole down as well. And it compromises the circumflex artery and vein. In some of the past anatomy sessions that we've had, we talked about the circumflex artery and vein, and they're basically right in this region of the foot here. They're below the tip of the coffin bone, and they supply all of this bottom end of the bone with its nutrients. Well, in the cases of laminitis, and particularly when the horse rotates, it pushes down on that artery here and actually crushes it and shuts down on that blood supply. So it becomes a very complicated situation with horses that are rotating. And if you look at how a horse stands, and this is how you can tell whether a horse is rotating or sinking. As a rule, they'll stand in a camped out position with their heels on the ground and the front part of their foot tipped forward in this sort of a position here. The limb out and the toe is tipped down, and two things are happening here. The back part of the foot is usually less painful, certainly a lot less painful than this portion over the front part. So they're seeking out the best part of their foot for support. They can get up, they can get down much more easily than they can if they're a sinker, because in a sinker, the rest of the foot is affected more. So horses that rotate will seek this position for comfort, and also it releases some of the tension on the deep flexor tendon, which actually pulls on that bone, and it seems to pull it right down into the sole. Now, it seems as though it's an involuntary pain response, involuntary tension on that deep flexor tendon that causes that to happen. And so it's just the position that they seek to make themselves more comfortable. Okay, we're going to talk a little bit about those horses that are sinkers now. Now, the difference is with the two types is that the lamina in the whole upper portion of this foot is affected. Instead of stopping here, the pain, the inflammation goes clear to the back. This is the most catastrophic event that can happen as far as laminitis is concerned, because as you would imagine, the whole coffin bone then moves straight down. It doesn't just move in a rotated form, being the tip of the bone down, but the whole coffin bone assembly moves down in the bottom of the foot. If you look here, you'll see that the lamina around the coronary band, as well as that down the front of the hoof wall inside, and also along the sole. And as the horse bears weight on that foot, that just tears the lamina loose, and the coffin bone just settles straight down. And horses find a different stance in this particular disease, because the front part is generally more affected, but it will separate at a slightly earlier rate than the back. They lose sensation earlier in the front portion, and oftentimes they're more painful in the back part of the foot, which is different than those horses that are rotating. So their stance is slightly different. You'll see them standing straight down with the front legs. Quite often they'll stand underneath of themselves behind, or they'll stand with their legs behind them. If the pain in the back part of their foot is more pain, where most of the pain is at, then that's how they'll stand, to try to lift the heels up a bit to get rid of some of that excruciating pain. Unfortunately, horses that are sinkers are the most severe, and what happens is the hoof capsule just merely slides right up over the top of the coffin bone, and it happens all the way around, crushing the bottom of the foot, all of the vasculature and all of the corium to the sole. Everything on the bottom gets compromised as well. So there's a lot of stuff that's going on there that's very difficult to deal with. That's basically what it boils down to as far as the difference between horses that rotate and those that are sinkers. I'm going to talk to you next week a little bit about how Mother Nature modifies this hoof to help save its life, offer some of its own structures for support and protection to the tip of the coffin bone and to the circumflex artery and vein. For now, that's all we have time for this week, and we look forward to seeing you next week and the weeks to come when we talk about this laminitis event and how you can become a part of saving your own horse's life. We're going to continue our sessions on laminitis. If you remember last week, we talked about the horses that were rotating and how the coffin bone separated from the dorsal wall, and how their stance simulated that same rotation that occurred in the event of laminitis. And then we also talked about horses that were sinkers and how the stance was different with that. And the thing that I didn't cover, and I'll talk a little bit about it now, is the difference between laminitis and founder. And as you can imagine, an itis is an inflammation or a disease of, and in this particular case, it's the lamina that has the inflammation. Founder is the thing that oftentimes occurs as a result of laminitis, and that's because of the weight that the horse is bearing on the hoof wall, and when the lamina is affected, it loosens that attachment and the coffin bone drops either straight down in cases of sinkers, or in cases of horses that rotate, it tips down forward. So we covered that a little bit yesterday, but anyway, that's basically what the difference is between laminitis and founder. The thing that's remarkable about this is that Mother Nature starts to modify the hoof very quickly in defense of the devastation of this disease. As I talked last week, we talked about the vulnerability of the tip of P3. It's a very fragile structure, and there's an artery and a vein that's closer to the ground than the bone. So as the bone moves against the sole on the underneath side of the foot, it tends to crush all of the vasculature, which shuts down the blood supply for the most part to the bone. So it's very vulnerable for permanent damage. So Mother Nature modifies this foot in a variety of different ways. Number one, you'll see accelerated heel growth with every horse that has foundered, simply because the pain that's incurred in the bottom of the foot sends messages to the muscles, and the muscles tend to contract. They do this involuntarily, and there's not a lot that they can do about it. So in defense of that, you'll see your horses that have laminitis and are foundering, they'll pack the dirt up in a pile behind their heel, and that's the way they'll stand to help relieve some of that tension on the deep flexion tendon that they have no control of. And so we, being observant of this over the years, have developed a variety of different ways to help them with this, because it's not always the situation that you have a deep sand pit to stand them in, or deep bedding and things like that. So, and that's the thing that we're going to talk about next week, is the things that you can do early in the syndrome so that you can preserve the quality of the bone and the vasculature inside of that foot. But for the most part, right now, we're going to talk about how Mother Nature modifies these structures. Okay, let's take a look at how this particular foot here is modified. Now, this is a club foot. It has modified in a very similar way. You look at the bars, they've grown completely around the apex of the frog. The reason for this is that the tip of the coffin bone, which is common for club feet, is very close to the ground surface. So Mother Nature modifies this area of the foot to help protect the vital structures, the distal border of P3 and the circumflex artery and vein. This is This is a foundered foot that is a result of a sinker, and you can see a similar arrangement of the bars. The frog has gotten very big. The frog welds itself right here to form a superstructure, which has now become an inner hoof wall. And this is the way Mother Nature protects these horses from the devastation of this foundering process. If you look at this through an X-ray, you'll see that the tip of the coffin bone is out here in this area, suspended from the inside instead of from the outside as it was before the laminitis occurred. The hoof wall is holding the coffin bone in place partially by the lamina. Now, as a result of the laminitis, it's lost its attachment, so Mother Nature quickly tries to adjust that with the way the frog grows, the way the bars modify themselves to form an inner hoof wall. If you look at this particular section, you'll see how this area of the foot has modified itself, become stronger in order to protect this vital structure here, the tip of the coffin bone. The success or the failure or the prognosis of laminitis pretty much depends on how the coffin bone is managed through this event, and if it survives without too much damage, then the horse can usually regain some usefulness and oftentimes goes back to pre-disease condition. It's all dependent upon how it's treated in the earliest possible stages. So in light of this bit of insight, we try to get ahead of the game. We know that this is what Mother Nature's trying to do, so it's up to us to help either furnish the horses with the proper bedding, either in the form of deep sand or deep shavings and the likes of that, so that they can pack this stuff up underneath of their foot in a proper way. But it's not always possible to do this in the most optimal way. So what we're going to talk about next week is what you can do with styrofoam blocks, purple podiatry pads, or a variety of other things that will help furnish the needs for these horses at this crucial time so that you can protect the vital structures inside. So until then, we'll look forward to seeing you next week when we talk about what you can do to help save your horse's life. Okay, we have a reoccurring bout with acute laminitis here. This guy's been chronic for some time, and he's got a metabolic issue which causes him to become acute occasionally, and this is frequently the case with a lot of these modern day laminitis horses. And so the styrofoam that we apply to his feet is going to give him initial comfort and make it more able for him to be ambulatory. And so we're going to demonstrate that today, show you how you can make these guys comfortable in very short order. And it's the preliminary treatment protocol for the EDSS system as well as the clogs. And so for the moment, the horse owners themselves can actually apply this material even before the vet looks at them, when they look as though they've had a bout like this. So we're going to show you how to do it step by step, and a very inexpensive approach to giving them the optimal comfort that they deserve. And while they regulate their feed, you got a couple of weeks here to set up the latest shoeing protocol from this point on. So these styrofoam blocks are 2 inches thick, and they're sized EDSS, small, medium, large, and extra large. This is how we like to see them fitted. You don't want them too far in the back. That tends to make them tip too far forward, but you want just a little bit of a rim all the way around. And this one fits him just nicely. There's approximately 1/4 of an inch on each side, and that's basically what you like. We rocker the toe a little bit. This one has been trimmed away already, but we want to unload this dorsal wall, make sure that all of the weight gets borne in this back section of his foot, which is generally the least painful. Once we've selected the proper size, we'll put a piece of tape across. And this tape is just to briefly attach it to the foot so that you can continue with wraps around the foot. And we'll put 2 on each side, go over the front here with a little piece. That one looks a little bit short. I'm just going to extend it a little bit just so that it'll come clear up on the front of his foot. So that's basically how you set this up. I'm going to tape this feather up here because we want 2 wraps to come right up over the bulbs of the heel. And if this hair is hanging down there, he won't want to put his foot down on the ground. He'll just pull all this hair here. So just for temporary, we'll tape it up out of the way here. And I'll put this on like so. Pull these tabs down firmly on each side and down on the toe. And you'll see that with that, it makes that block fairly firm so that I can continue with more wraps around the foot. And I'm going to try to put this tape half on the block and half on the foot with my initial wrap, and then make a couple wraps there. And as quickly as I can, I'm going to come up well over the bulbs of the heel here, like so, and then I overlap that wrap with another one, and then blend all of these wraps in together. What that does is it joins every one of these clear up over the bulbs of his heel and the block and bonds this whole thing together. And you can see it's really quite firm. So I'm going to go ahead and let him stand on that now. You see there, you notice how uncomfortable he was before. Now this is his preference foot. So you always want to put this on the most painful foot first. That gives you a better opportunity to do the other one. You'll figure that out in a hurry. If you can't pull that foot up off the ground, best go to the other foot, because that's the one that he's sorest on. And if you can give him a bit of comfort off of that, that'll give you a better chance to work on the other foot. So this is the approach that we use. Okay, the next step in this is to make a pad approximately 6 inches long, well, about 6 to 8 inches long, and you overlap these pieces together here. And you make this up ahead of time. And what this does is it preserves the ground surface of that block to keep it from wearing out. You put a couple of layers on here, you overlap them like that, make a pad. It's a lot easier to do it on your leg or on a piece of wood or something before you, well, he wants to keep that on the ground because it feels so good. You put that over the bottom here, pull these edges down like so, and just take a row around it. One little strip around there is enough to hold that on, but that's going to, for next 2 or 3 days, it's going to keep that styrofoam from becoming chipped and worn away. And that little bit there is going to last him for a couple of days, and he should be real comfortable. That's what we like to see. We want that other foot to come off the ground saying, yes, this is what I think is really helpful. And if you can do that for a horse that's that sore, it shows that you're able to do something, and the owners of the horses can do this. That's the thing that's nice about it. It's not magic, it's just common sense treatment. As you recall, we put this styrofoam blocks on him approximately 2 days ago, and they've crushed down, as you can see, to about 3/4 of an inch or so. And that's what we expected. It means he's been fairly active on it, and it's done a nice job of compressing. And so we're going to pull this off, trim it away from the most painful part of his foot, and then add another block to it once we've replaced this and put it back in his foot. Peel this off the back part here. We try to keep it intact if we can. Okay, you can see that it's molded itself quite nicely to the bottom of his foot. There's the frog, there's the commissures right there. So we'll go ahead and hoof test him now, find out where the most painful part of his foot is. Okay, we're getting a more painful response right there. So I'm going to cut this just behind the apex of that frog. You can see here where the frog is really stretched out. It almost goes clear to the end of his toe. Now this foot has been trimmed, and most of this distortion has been removed off the front. So that's the reason why there's not much foot out in front of it. So this horse has become acutely foundered again. So we're going to just trim it back to this part of his foot, which is exemplified right there. I'm going to draw a line around that. I'm going to draw it right about in that area right there, starting right about there, and draw that same basic pattern like that. Once we've got it to where we can kind of look at it a little bit, then we'll take and trim it. If you have a pad cutter, it works pretty good, which you can also do this with nippers as well. It trims right off there. Trim this piece, and we're going to put this back into the bottom of his foot. Put a couple of little tabs over each side here, and we're going to put that back in his foot, just the way it came out. And those little depressions that are made by the frog will be easy to find. You'll just move them around and they'll lock into place. Put that piece back on there. And mind you, it's trimmed behind the most sensitive spot on his foot. And we'll just take one little wrap around here with that. Like so. And then we'll let him stand on that again. We've done that with the other side already. So we've got our other piece here ready to go back on, and we've put the cross on the top of it. Now this is the second block. The first block is there, it's been compressed, and we've trimmed it away from the most sensitive part of the foot. And now we're ready to put this second block on top of that to make a second compression. So place the block on his foot, pull the tabs down. Do the same as we did with the original block. Okay. And that's basically all there is. We'll take off our wrap here for our feather wrap, and just double check, make sure none of that's gotten tucked down in behind there. Okay. And we'll take him for a little walk and see if he likes that. All right. It's real common for him to want to crush the front of that first. That helps to relieve some of the tension on the deep flexor tendon, which is a part of the acute laminitis. And if it shows in the instruction video how to deal with that if it crushes too quickly. We're going to let him walk around here, and you can see he's much more comfortable. They're able to move, takes the torque off of the lamina around the coffin bone, and it's just one of those ways of giving him that comfort. You can see the expression on his face is a lot better, and for the next couple of days he's going to have a lot of comfort. Great. Well, that's all the time we have for today. If you want any more information about this, just contact our office at edsshuffcare.com. and look into it just a little bit more. We have instruction materials, all kinds of different things, so that you can be a big part of saving your horse's life by early treatment of in the early treatment of laminitis through this styrofoam procedure.